Number 10. Joshua Stimpson. On June 29, 2017, Joshua Stimpson murdered his ex-girlfriend Molly McLaren while she was in her car at the Dockside Shopping Center in Chatham. According to reports, the poor woman was stabbed a total of 75 times. When 23-year-old Molly matched with Joshua on Tinder around 8 months prior to the murder, she had absolutely no idea what she was signing up for. The two were in a relationship for 7 months, but Molly decided to break up with him due to his unsettling behavior, and that's when things went horribly wrong. The day after their split, Joshua told Molly that she could have broken up with him in a more respectful manner. He also started posting derogatory comments and pictures about her on Facebook and made false claims that she was using drugs. According to Molly's friends, she was very worried and told them that she was scared of what he might do to her. Molly reported the comments to Facebook, but nothing happened. She then went to the North Kent police station to report her ex's dangerous behavior, and when the cops warned Joshua to stay away from Molly, he didn't really care and ignored them. 2 weeks after their breakup, he creepily showed up to her gym. She immediately contacted her parents and friends, and they told her to leave as soon as possible, and that's exactly what she had tried to do. Molly was in the driver's seat of her car when Joshua walked towards her, yanked her door open, and started stabbing her in the neck and head over and over again. Joshua was soon arrested and pleaded guilty to diminished responsibility manslaughter, but denied murder. The judge sentenced him to a minimum of 26 years in prison and said that it's possible he may never be released. Number 9. Joseph Oberhansley. On September 11, 2014, Joseph Oberhansley was found in a bathtub inside his ex-girlfriend's house holding the dismembered body of his ex, Tammy Blanton. A skillet, a bloody pair of tongs, and a plate containing her skull and bones were also found nearby. Joseph broke into Tammy's house, stabbed her, dismembered her body, and even ate parts of her lungs, heart, and brain. He did this after she broke up with him and changed the locks to her home. He was furious that he had lost control over her and wanted to get back at her for breaking up with him. After being arrested, Joseph initially confessed to his crimes but later proclaimed his innocence. His lawyers argued that he had been coerced into making a confession. This wasn't the first time Joseph had done something like this. He had previously served 12 years in prison in Utah after killing his girlfriend and shooting his mother at the age of 18. He even shot himself, but he survived. After serving his sentence, he moved to Indiana in 2012, where he soon met Tammy, and the two got into a relationship that ended with a violent murder. The first time they tried his case, it ended in a mistrial, after the defense argued that he was mentally unstable. However, he was still convicted of second-degree murder the second time around, and was sentenced to life in prison. Number 8. William Riley GAUL. 18-year-old Knoxville, Tennessee resident Riley GAUL was Central High School's star football player. His 16-year-old girlfriend, Emma Walker, was a popular cheerleader. The two seemed like picture-perfect sweethearts straight out of a teen drama. However, the reality was much, much darker. They were in a toxic, on-and-off-again relationship for about 2 years, and they often got into intense and heated arguments. GAUL was extremely controlling and wanted her all to himself. He didn't want her to hang out with anyone but him. He would also often comment on Emma's clothing, telling her what she should and shouldn't wear. Throughout their toxic relationship, he started sending her aggressive and abusive messages. He once even implied that he was going to kill her. Her parents saw the red flags and banned GAUL from their home. They even took away Emma's phone to stop the teens from communicating. However, this didn't work. GAUL secretly gave her an iPod Touch, and she would text message him through the Wi-Fi. Like all abusers, GAUL would always apologize after his nasty messages and would tell her how much he loves her. Emma's parents asked her to break up with him repeatedly, but she just wouldn't listen. According to them, he had a way of isolating her where he would make her feel like he was the only one there for her. Things seemed to get better after GAUL graduated. Emma's parents grounded her and started monitoring everywhere she went. She started to become her old self again and soon broke up with GAUL. He didn't take the split well at all. Finally, in November 2016, the story came to a tragic end when GAUL shot Emma dead while she was sleeping in her home in Knoxville, Tennessee. GAUL posted super emotional and heartfelt tributes to his late girlfriend on his social media accounts in an attempt to protect himself, but it wasn't long before he was arrested and given a life sentence after being convicted of first-degree murder. Number 7. Javier da Silva Rojas. On February 5, 2019, 24-year-old Valerie Reyes was found dead in a red suitcase on the side of the road in Greenwich, Connecticut. It was later discovered that she was brutally murdered by her ex-boyfriend, Javier da Silva Rojas. Months after Valerie broke up with Rojas, he showed up to her apartment and the two got into a terrible fight. This horrifically violent episode ended with him tying her up, covering her mouth with tape, and stuffing her into a suitcase. He dumped it near a wooded area in Greenwich and eventually used Valerie's debit card to steal more than $5,000 from her bank account. Medical examiners revealed that Valerie had multiple wounds on her face and there was a large hematoma on her forehead. But she didn't die because of those injuries. She actually died from choking to death inside the suitcase due to a lack of oxygen. According to reports, Valerie had been pretty terrified and was having anxiety attacks for weeks before the incident. She even once told her mother that she was worried someone was going to murder her. Rojas later admitted to murdering his girlfriend and was sentenced to 30 years in prison. And because he's an illegal immigrant, the cold-blooded murderer will be deported back to his home country of Portugal after completing the sentence. Do you think Rojas will face different charges after he's sent back to his home country? Tell us in the comments and hit that subscribe button while you're at it. Number 6. Juan GASTELUM. After going missing for around 2 months, 30-year-old Yanira Cedillo's body was found on May 12, 2022 in a remote area in Walla Walla County, Washington. She had 3 children, and just before her gruesome murder, she was celebrating her 30th birthday with her friends. Throughout the night, her ex-boyfriend Juan GASTELUM kept calling her and asking her where she was and who she was with. Just before midnight, Yanira got into an argument with her friends and immediately left the party. She later called one of her friends and asked them to pick her up on the 1000 block of Stratford Road, but when her friend got there, Yanira was nowhere to be seen. Worried, the friend called her and could hear a male in the background yelling and asking her who she was talking to. Soon, the phone call was disconnected and Yanira disappeared. After this, Juan drove Yanira to her apartment and murdered her. But this wasn't enough for him. The psychotic GASTELUM stayed there for hours after her death and took pictures of himself while he sexually assaulted her dead body. He later moved her body and dumped it in a remote area. According to documents, GASTELUM had been physically abusive to Yanira multiple times before he killed her. She even tried to get a restraining order against him in October of 2021. Currently in prison, GASTELUM is facing second-degree murder and second-degree sexual assault charges for what he did to Yanira and is expected to be sentenced to life in prison. Number 5. Melanie Eames. 21-year-old James Barry and 20-year-old Melanie Eames met online and developed a relationship over their shared love of video games. The Florida couple spent most of their time together. In fact, they even made sure they went to the same college and often took the same classes just to be together at all times. However, in November 2016, James broke up with her over a gaming chat app, and she did not take it well at all. She was hurt, heartbroken, and furious. In her rage, she drove to her ex-boyfriend's home to confront him in person. There, the two got into a fight and Melanie got even angrier. She grabbed the knife out of a kitchen drawer and repeatedly stabbed poor James. After murdering her ex-boyfriend, she ran away to Silver Spring in Maryland, around 1,000 miles or just over 1,600 kilometers away from the crime scene. James had tried to break up with Melanie several times before this as well. Apparently, she was super possessive and repeatedly insisted that James spent every single second of his day with her. Red flags were always there, and this one time after the breakup, Melanie picked up a knife and threatened to stab herself. In 2019, Melanie Eames was found guilty of second-degree murder and sentenced to 50 years in prison. Number 4. GRISSEL Gonzaga. GRISSEL Gonzaga and Alexa Incandela dated for around 2 years, and the pair even lived together at home in Las Vegas. No one knew that this same house would soon become the site of a brutal and devastating murder. A few months after the two broke up, GRISSEL showed up at her ex's apartment to, quote, surprise her. She forced her way inside through a sliding glass door, but was shocked to find her ex, Alexa, in bed with a man, who was later identified as Travis Smith. She was enraged to see the person she loved with someone else and attacked her. After Travis pulled GRISSEL off Alexa, she directed her anger at the unfortunate guy who was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. She started punching and choking him while he attempted to defuse the situation by trying to talk to her. According to reports, she initially used tweezers to stab him. She later retrieved a kitchen knife and used that to attack him as well. Travis soon called Metro Dispatch and reported that he had been stabbed in the abdomen. Medical crews arrived and found that he was suffering from a puncture wound as well as head trauma. They immediately transferred him to St. Rose, Siena, where he sadly passed away from his injuries. Alexa also suffered minor lacerations, but thankfully she was treated at the scene and soon recovered. In March 2021, GRISSEL was found guilty of felony voluntary manslaughter and felony battery use of a deadly weapon. Shockingly, she was only sentenced to 3 to 10 years in prison. Number 3. PORSCHE Humphrey. Intelligent and handsome Lauren High had a bright future ahead of him, but he tragically lost his life at the young age of 29 because of a jealous ex-girlfriend who couldn't let him go. In 2015, Lauren High began dating Portia Humphrey, and at first everything seemed perfect. The two got along well, and Lauren was head over heels in love with her. They even talked about marriage and kids, but around a year into their relationship, things began to fall apart. They would fight about everyday stuff, such as money, and because Humphrey was super insecure, she often feared that Lauren would leave her for another woman. Reportedly, their relationship came to an end when Humphrey saw her boyfriend like someone else's post on Facebook and threw a huge tantrum. They had an argument about this, and Lauren soon broke up with her. According to his friends, he was done with her and wanted some peace in his life. Then, in February 2017, a little while after the breakup, Humphrey showed up to his place, and after a heated argument, she shot Lauren to death with his own gun. She tried to get rid of the evidence and even gave the cops a phony alibi, but was eventually arrested due to a fingerprint found at the crime scene. In March 2017, Humphrey was arrested and charged with first-degree reckless homicide. In March 2018, she was given a sentence of just 9 years in prison, leading many to question why she wasn't given a more severe punishment despite being convicted of murdering a young man. Number 2. Jodi Arias. Months after they broke up, 32-year-old Jodi Arias stabbed her ex-boyfriend, 30-year-old Travis Alexander, 27 times. She also slit his neck and shot him in his own bathroom. The murder took place in Mesa, Arizona in June 2008. The two dated for nearly 5 months in 2007, but after Travis broke up with Jodi, citing religious reasons, she became obsessed with him and started stalking him. In December, she found out that he was dating someone else and reportedly slashed the tires of his car twice. She also hacked into his Facebook account to try and see who he was talking to. In his last few days, Travis had told his friends that Jodi was a sociopath and the worst thing to ever happen to him. He even told them that he was genuinely scared of her. However, even after their breakup, the two stayed in touch, and according to reports, they had sex on the night of the murder. They then got into a fight which led Jodi to get angry and stabbed Travis repeatedly. She cut him from ear to ear and finished the job by shooting him. The victim had cuts on his hands, indicating he had desperately tried to defend himself before dying. In 2005, Jodi was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Number 1. Tyler Rios. On July 10, 2021, 24-year-old Yasmin Uyar's body was found in Tennessee, hundreds of miles away from her home in Rahway. According to reports, her half-naked body was brutally stuffed into a duffel bag and discarded in the woods. She was murdered by her ex-boyfriend Tyler Rios, with whom she had a 2-year-old son, Sebastian. A few weeks after their breakup, Tyler was at Yasmin's apartment discussing where their son would be living. The argument got heated, and Tyler completely lost control of his emotions. He killed the mother of his child with a wrestling move by putting his forearm around her throat until she ultimately stopped breathing. Tyler is a former Highland Park School wrestler, and, unfortunately, his victim stood no chance of surviving. He then picked up the dead body, put it in a duffel bag, and placed it in Yasmin's car and drove to Tennessee, where he would later dump the body. And to make things worse, he even took the terrified little child with him. Authorities soon tracked his location and found him hiding in a hotel. The child was physically unharmed, but the psychological scars will likely never go away. According to Yasmin's mother, the little boy repeatedly talks about the traumatic incident and says that he saw, quote, "Daddy choke mommy," end quote. Tyler pleaded guilty to manslaughter and was sentenced to 25 years in state prison for killing his ex-girlfriend and 5 more years for desecrating her remains. Thanks for watching. Which of these disturbing incidents did you find the most terrifying? Tell us in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. See you next time on The Bad Badger.